Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Makia Video Productions, and Melly Productions, with additional support from Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture. So here we are in another exciting edition of Meet the Farmer TV. We'll look at some specific things in Central Virginia, but also show you how it applies to cities all over the United States. Let's look at one of the institutions in Virginia, the Virginia Farm Bureau.
Well, Farm Bureau started, I think, early in the 20th century as a cooperative. It was an effort, along with some cooperatives that still exist, like Southern States Cooperative, for farmers to pool their resources and buy their supplies. It has nowadays, it's an organization it's a nonprofit corporation that supports farming, exists to foster agriculture and be an advocate for farmers in the country. And it's a fairly large organization. Virginia Farm Bureau has something like 247,000 members. About 36,000, I think, are producers, agricultural products. Here in Albemarle County, we have a little over 2,500 members. But it's a large organization. Each county is a member of the state organization, and each state organization is a member of the American Farm Bureau. So it's nationally, it's the largest farm representation that we have. I'd like to point out, though, and this is a Farm Bureau statistic, 99% of all farms are family-owned. Saving the local farms means that we're providing support to our membership, and that's our primary function and our main goal. The more we can persuade the customer, the urban customer, to buy some things fresh. Mainly that's going to be vegetables, maybe some dairy products, in some cases some butchered meat. But the more we can persuade them and convince them that this is better food, then the more profitable small farming is to those who operate them. And in our area, if we don't maintain these farms, the alternative is development. Land here in Central Virginia is so inflated in value that no one could afford to buy a farm like this and farm it and get the money back. It would never come back. So as these smaller farms are sold, they become one or more division lots, and you have that many more houses. And we seem to grow houses pretty well here in Albemarle. So anything we can do to keep these farms in operation not only helps the farmer, but it preserves the open space that we all want and preserves the atmosphere that the county says it would like to keep. I think it's easy to say that we could support more of these self-service farms, so to speak, the ones that sell locally in the farmer's market. Our consumer base would certainly support more than we have, and that's what we're hoping that will grow. Well, I think getting this done is a lot like a lot of other farm issues that we deal with. Education is going to be the main solution, I think. Most of our people in the United States now have become more than a generation or two removed from the land. It used to be that agriculture was something that most people understood. Now it's foreign to us, and most of us are city dwellers, and our origins are city. So I think if we can educate the public to what these farms are providing in terms not only of some food, and they're selling mainly vegetables, and as I said, and a few other things, but also they're providing the atmosphere that people move here to Central Virginia to enjoy. I think what I would really like to see happen is that, speaking of education, is that we all understand that this isn't a competitive thing. Urban residents are not on one side and farm owners and other rural residents on the other, and I'm afraid a lot of us tend to look at it that way without meaning to. We all want the same things. We all want open country around us. We all want good atmosphere, air and water quality, things of that kind. But farmers sometimes believe that their city cousins, so to speak, don't realize how much we are actually accomplishing on the place. I've got a lot of green fields here that help to provide the oxygen that people want, I guess. I've got some stream buffers involved in a government set-aside program where we don't cultivate and don't harvest anything along a certain amount of stream border so as to keep the water quality better. There are a lot of things like that that we do, and we do a lot of them just for our own benefit even. It's to my advantage to be a conservationist. I don't want to let the land work its way down. I want to keep the fertility up and I want to keep the growth up. And the way to do that is to try to keep things green, so to speak, to use a contemporary word. When we talk about government programs, farmers are not a monolithic group. I'm a livestock farmer. We raise cattle, and by and large, livestock producers operate without any real government subsidies. We may have government programs that assist us with managing the land and preserving the natural resources, but farmers who raise cattle or sheep or pork are dependent on a market. They're dependent on the supply and demand factors that influence our prices, and when I take cattle to the market, I don't know what I'm going to get. I have bought everything to provide for those cattle at retail price, but I'm going to sell them as wholesale. Now, in other areas where people are more grain oriented, there are more government programs, and you'll read reports of people who have large acreage getting a big government payment, and that doesn't sit too well with a lot of people. But I hope we can remember that these programs are mainly designed not so much as a welfare program for the farmer, but rather as a food source guarantee so that our nation can produce enough of this grain for everyone to enjoy and to have some to feed the rest of the world as well. So it doesn't bother me, though I'm not getting a whole lot of government support. It doesn't bother me to see that some farmer out in the Midwest with 1,000 acres of corn land is getting a big government check. That's fine, because that corn he produces is going to provide feed for my cattle, and my cattle are going to provide food for your grocery store. Well, now, in terms of local programs, what comes to my mind is at the county level is the land use program. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a system where our land is assessed for tax purposes on the basis of what it is producing and can produce, rather than on what it might be worth if I decided to sell it as development property. That's been a controversial issue here lately because a number of people who aren't landowners feel that they are subsidizing us. Actually, I'm paying the same rate that everybody else does on my house. I'm paying it on this lawn that we're standing in here. That's assessed at full market value. So are the barns on the place and other improvements. It's only the productive land that's getting this lesser tax charge. And again, my argument is that is maintaining the land as open land, whereas if I had to pay the full tax on this property, I couldn't afford to keep it. And the only way it would sell as development potential. And either a homeowner or a realtor who is an investment speculator would buy it, and ultimately it would grow houses. Well, as far as trends go, we talked earlier about buying local and buying fresh, and we talked about the small farms that provide those things. I see that very thankfully as a growing trend. I think we're going to see more of that here, and I hope the consumers will support it. Another trend that I'm not quite as enthusiastic about is in Central Virginia is urbanization that's going on, and all of us are trying to resist that as well as we can. I want to see this farm stay as a farm, but I may not be able to afford to keep it that way, or my descendants may not be able to afford it. I'm fourth generation here, and I'd like to think that a a few more behind me might still be farming the land, but who knows, I wouldn't tie their hands. As I say, I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. All of them love the farm. None of them are actively involved in it at this point, and whether they can ever afford to or not is a good question. We've encouraged our children, and they've encouraged their grandchildren, to learn to make a living first, and then hopefully hold on to the farm if they can. But that's a situation that's not atypical. There are some full-time farmers, and we have some fairly successful ones here in Albemarle County, and most of those, though, are farming land other than their own. They're farming, leasing land, or they are employed to farm, manage other farms for other people. All of us depend on keeping things green, to use the word in its modern sense. If I don't maintain the kind of natural resources that I have, then I've lost. It's a livelihood. It's as green in that sense as is the person who's buying local just so he won't use a lot of gasoline to haul that product all over the country. So I think that's generally true of all of us, but we perhaps see it in different ways.
Virginia Farm Bureau is a membership organization that's comprised of 88 different county farm bureaus that come together to form the Virginia Farm Bureau. Those producer members came together to join their voice as one for lobbying efforts in Richmond, to help the farmer have a voice in Richmond, and also to provide membership services to those members through the ways of insurance and other membership advantages that we have throughout Virginia Farm Bureau. So many times when we look at local land issues or local government issues, it seems like agriculture, everyone seems to push agriculture out somewhere. Agriculture is something that takes place in the Midwest or in a certain region of the country. Well, agriculture needs to be a part of every community, and agriculture is a very big part of Albemarle County, and it needs to continue to be a big part of Albemarle County for everyone's benefit, not just the producers, because when it's all said and done, we all share the common resources that we all live here in Albemarle County, and we're all better for the efforts of the producer members who take advantage of those. As Tip O'Neill said, when it comes to government, all matters are local. So local government plays more of an impact on your daily life than this presidential election we're getting ready to come across. A lot of people don't pay attention to the local stuff. That has more of a direct influence on your life on a day-to-day basis than national and state level issues. So first of all, let's get involved locally. Pay attention to what's going on locally. And just because it doesn't affect you directly, let's see how it affects our neighbors and friends. A big question mark of many local governments is, how do you save the farms? Well, one of the ways you save a farm is to make sure they're so economically viable and strong that anyone would be a fool to sell the farm. Well, that definitely hasn't been the case over the last 30 years. You've seen more and more farms being sold to development and higher use values. But if we actually had a higher end product, we could make a larger wage or a larger profit from what we produce on the farm, then you see less and less people going away from the farms to support their families, coming back to the farms to raise their kids on the farms, and to also have a standard of living that they feel comfortable with. And that's the best way to save farmland, is to save the viability of the economic enterprise as well as the social and lifestyle that we all benefit from as well. Well, we definitely need to know all the options out there. So many times when we look at raw commodities, we're in a one-track mind of how those commodities are produced. So you see the entrepreneurs in the world, especially those entrepreneurs in agriculture who think about things differently or see things differently, or how we could possibly do it different. Well, we shouldn't see those people as outsiders or anything of that nature. We need to see them as visionaries, and we need to follow their lead. And if they have a good idea, well, let's follow that good idea and let's make a business enterprise out of it. So you're seeing more and more of that type of thing as we develop. And you go through, so many times you go to the supermarket shelf, we see so many refined products and so many products on the supermarket shelf that they're just marketing. That's all they are. Where we need to get back to figure out where those products really came from and really try to identify what food you're eating to begin with, not just the marketing label that is associated with it. And so both the Buy Fresh, Buy Local movements and the Save Our Food movements And this whole let's get back to know our food idea, know who it comes from. I had a great visit a year or so ago down it with a distributor for Food City, and he was responsible for buying all the produce for Food City in there. And he said his best marketing campaign by far was to simply put a picture of the farmer that grew the produce next to the bin of produce when it come in, and he said it flew off the shelves. You know, let's get to know the families and the faces of the people producing your food again. Let's not take it for granted. Just go to the supermarket and picking it up, throw it in a bag, and paying the cheapest price for it. And we do need to get away from the cheap food policy, because input costs are going up, and to match the input costs necessary to producing food and to still try to produce a cheap food product, a lot of that cheap food comes from overseas. And I don't think that's the best thing in the world for this country either. So we need to pay attention to what's going on in the trends, and we need to do our part. And I think as the consumer, which is ultimately the driver of the market, comes about and he says he wants to spend his dollars with a local farmer. I mean, if you're going to spend $10 anyway, let's go give the $10 to the farmer, put it directly in his hand, and not do the trickle-down method and let him end up with $2 in the end. Let's put that $10 directly in his hand and circumvent our distribution systems and buy it directly from the farm. And go out and see the enterprise and see where that food is produced and understand the cultural and the environmental challenges that they have to face every day to produce that food, and you'll definitely get a different appreciation from it. Just this past weekend, my wife and I, we have 4 children. We just said, let's go find a pumpkin. We went up on top of Carter's Mountain, where the Childs family's been producing apples in the orchard business here in Albemarle County for generations. And they run one of the finest operations here in the state of Virginia. Carter's Mountain here in Charlottesville, or the Childs Peach Orchard out in Crozet. And it's just an absolutely wonderful time for the family. And you see your children's faces light up when you go to the farm and you hold them up into the trees to pick the highest apple they can find, or the freshest peach they can find, or in the spring of the year, the fresh strawberries when they are right off the vine. That's the experience that are connected with the food. And when you can tie an experience with the taste, by gosh, that's something that sinks deep. You know, the median age of producer members in this country is over 55 years old and keeps getting older every year. And myself being 35 years old, I'm definitely not in the norm. I don't find too many young producers anymore. You know, we have to travel across the state to find, you know, young producers here and there, but there are definitely a lot of them out there, a lot of energized producers, and their enterprises have changed versus their father's enterprises or their grandfather's enterprises because of the dynamics that we face. But still, there are a lot of people who've had the seeds of agriculture ingrained in them at a young age, and agriculture is something I think you have to catch on to at a young age and see that appreciation for it at a young age. When I was 4 years old, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. You know, I went to college and met a lot of great friends, and they were 20-something, and they still didn't know what they wanted to do with their life. Now, I felt I was blessed because I really knew what I wanted to do. So if I can instill some of those seeds of agriculture in my children, or even some of your children when they come out, not that they want to be a farmer, but as long as they could appreciate what it took to produce that food, or why is it important to keep a farm from going into development. You can't regulate land use initiatives as far as stopping farmland from going into development. How you do that is to make sure that you have a viable business to make a choice over. And it's a business decision whether a piece of farmland is sold to development or maintained as a farm. So many times our local legislators, they want to put mandates down on top of local landowners that you almost mandate agriculture or mandate that you can't do anything with that land but what it's currently being used at. And I think that's definitely a wrong approach. So we need to goes back to what I've been saying all along, is let's make sure agriculture has a strong economic future, and therefore you'll start seeing less and less farms going under. And when it comes down to it, we're a capitalist society. We need to be a country of entrepreneurs and business people. We need to be, like I say, visionaries and think about things differently. You know, it's this thing, it says if you continue to do the same thing over and over, you're going to continue to get what you got. So we need to do things different every year and really progress to make sure that we're building a stronger business for years 5 and 10 years down the road. So if your kids do want to come back to the farm, there's something there for them to come back to, and there's a place for them there beside you. So I get this asking me a lot of what can the government do more. Well, we need the government to do what it was designed to do. Help do the things that one person can't do for themselves. So we need the rules and regulations there to make sure everyone's playing on a level playing field. Other than that, get out of the way. Let the true entrepreneurs in the world, or the true business people, the ones out there, let's let them go to work and give that product they want to the consumer to them directly and without the red tape. The inspectors are there to help the consumer, and so we need to make sure they play a viable part. But there is also, with that inspection, there's a backlog. So if I have, say, beef cattle here that I want to turn into beef, to go through a USDA inspection, I've got to go through a processing plant. Well, if 10 other producers throughout the state want to do the same thing, there's probably only 2 or 3 processing plants left in the state of Virginia that could USDA inspection, so it's kind of a backlog there. Say the cattle on the hill behind us, if we wanted to process those, sell them directly, I may have a 6-month wait to get them through a processing facility. Well, that's the hurdle. And that hurdle's been created because for so long, there was no profit to be made by marketing your own cattle or to processing your own cattle, but now there is. So I hope to see here in the next few years more processing facilities to come in to help get the supply and demand thing flowing directly to the consumers, to help the producers. And it has been a large-scale commercial agricultural system for a long time, and I'm hoping it's starting to come back to us a little bit. Community share agriculture events and the farmers markets, fantastic. Directly connect the farmers, get the farmers face there with the products they produce. The CSAs, you sign a prescription and we're going to provide you produce and breads or whatever, eggs, whatever we decide to provide you, fresh cut flowers, and those, great. Let's directly connect you to it, put the dollar bills directly in the farmer's hand and not pass it through the distribution chains that we've currently had. And your farmer's going to be happy, you're going to be happier, and it's a better system in the long run. Many people, when they talk about the state of Virginia and they talk about the industries within the state of Virginia, they want to name technology, the shipyards, exports, imports, and things of that nature. But when you ask them what's the #1 industry in the state of Virginia, agriculture is usually not on the top of their mind. Well, I have news for everyone. Agriculture and forestry is the #1 industry within the state of Virginia. And there's not even a close #2, okay? The economic impact of agriculture within our local communities is enormous. And it takes an enormous amount of investment and personal sacrifice to maintain these farms that many people drive by every day and just enjoy their pastoral views. But yet the sacrifice that the landowners have gone through to maintain that property and to keep it in that state is enormous. And that personal investment, that financial investment that they've made in their property goes directly to the local communities, your local co-ops, your local southern states, local banks. Well, we've got to have employment. We're employees, so we hire local employees more than likely. So there's a trickle-down effect there. So agriculture is a huge player in the economics of Virginia, and it will continue to be for a long time. We take pride in agriculture, take pride in the environment and the natural resources that we protect and we have here on the farm, and we don't do anything that we think is going to degrade those at all. And we think we're actually benefiting the environment by the practices that we instill. We have something called best management practices. It's kind of a buzzword throughout the industry. And most of those standards that the government has come through with and called them these best management practices are practices that many producers have been doing for years. And so, as I said before, nobody wants to take better care of that farm and that land than the owner. A lot of large-scale operations use these commodity products that they produce, beef, whether it be corn or soybeans, because you can do large-scale operations with few people. You can do most of the operations mechanized, so you can take a 1,000-acre farm and put it in corn and soybeans and a few beef cattle and have a pretty sustainable economic entity. Where you take an acre of garden that you're going to sell into your local produce, or for every, I have a different appreciation for an acre, how large an acre is, once I put in some grapevines and started working those vines by hand. So I don't think it's the answer to the world problems is going to be to turn every acre of farmland into a backyard garden and we're all going to prosper. Definitely there are niche operations where if you can take a couple acres off, say your 100 acres, and do a garden or a CSA or a produce that you're going to sell at the local farmer market to supplement it, and the rest of the farm you're going to do commodities, your pastures or your crops and things like that. It's a nice blend there. And so it's going to be a balance. I don't think we're ever going to get away from the commodity system, because there's still large plots of land out there that we just can't all farm with a hoe. But there's a place for all of it. And we need to make sure everybody has a place at the table in this. That if you want to, this country, if you want to succeed, you ought to have the right to succeed, as long as you abide by the letter of the law. So if you have an idea, even though some law enrichment or it may not be, if you have a great idea how to get your product to the consumer, well, we need to make sure first that it's legal to do that. Get those hurdles, and then let's make sure if all they are hurdles, let's get those hurdles out of the way, and let's let that entrepreneur do what he knows to do, because he has the best ideas of all. You know, so many times neighbors who don't have the potential for wind energy don't want it because they don't want to look at the views. But if we need to tap into every form of renewable energy we can in this country, okay? And we need to find out if it's viable and a possibility. And if it is a viable possibility, then we need to pursue it. Solar, wind, hydroelectric, whatever it be, we need to make sure we're doing our part to get out of this rut that we've been in for so many years. Because we need to, as I said before, you keep doing the same thing over and over, you're going to keep getting what you got. So we need to change the way we think about things. I love visiting with folks from the city when they come to the farm, because sometimes they'll look at something that I've been doing for years, the whole life. It's because everyone's done it. That's the way you've always done it. Well, someone who's never seen it before asks the question, why you do it like that? Because I always have. So sometimes if you can get a different perspective on things and see it from someone else's view, you realize that there's a better way to do things sometimes, and we need to look at those better ways of producing. You can get in touch with Virginia Farm Bureau at vafb.com or at saveourfood.org. And the saveourfood.org is more of the getting connected with the local food movement. It gives you lots of connections there on the website to where you can find your local farmers markets or some of your local producers and things like that, and also just some food from the farm. And it also allows you to join one of the largest member farmer organizations in the state of Virginia, and that's Virginia Farm Bureau. And we're trying to make a common voice for all farmers and all landowners and all who recognize the value of production agriculture here in the state of Virginia.
So we've learned a lot about the Virginia Farm Bureau, their long history in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Join us again next time on Meet the Farmer TV. For additional information and extended versions of this program, visit our website, www.meetthefarmer.com. Meet the Farmer TV was made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Makia Video Productions, and Melly Productions, with additional support from Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture.